This is my true story. I raised a boy who wasn't my blood, but I treated him like my own. I gave him education, money, and a path in life. I thought loyalty and respect would come back to me in time. But I was wrong. Behind my back, he had an affair with someone I once called my wife. The betrayal cut me twice, once as a husband, once as a father. I didn't scream, I didn't fight, I planned. And you won't believe how I destroyed him. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And please subscribe. When I first remarried, I knew it would not just be about me and my new wife. She had a son from her first marriage, a young man who was still finding his way in life. From the very beginning, I told myself that blood did not define family, actions did. And so, I took him in as my own. I gave him a place in my home, food at my table, and guidance whenever he asked. I did not treat him as a stranger or as someone belonging to another man. I treated him as if he carried my own name, my own blood. In those early years, I went above and beyond to give him opportunities I never had. His education was one of my top priorities. I worked long hours, set aside money, and made sure his school fees were always paid on time. When he wanted to apply to college, I didn't hesitate. I wrote checks, signed forms, and even sold a few of my belongings to make sure he got the start he needed. I remembered my own struggles as a young man, working odd jobs, going hungry some nights, trying to make ends meet. I told myself he would not have to go through what I went through. That was my duty as a stepfather, to give him a smoother path. It wasn't just about money, it was about presence. I guided him in his career choices, helping him map out which field to pursue. I introduced him to people I knew, old friends, former colleagues, business contacts who trusted me. Some of them agreed to meet with him only because I asked. They didn't know him, but they respected me, and through me, doors were opened for him. I thought he understood that. I thought he saw how much I invested in him, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. There were nights when he would sit at the table with me talking about his dreams. He wanted success, he wanted wealth, he wanted recognition. I told him those things don't come easy, but with discipline and integrity, they would come. I spoke to him like a father would to a son, hoping he would take my words to heart. When he landed his first job interview, I gave him my best suit and tie, pressed neatly, telling him to wear it with pride. I stood at the door that morning and watched him leave, and in my heart, I felt proud. I thought, this is what it means to be family, to build each other, to lift each other up. As he began working, I still supported him. He wasn't earning much at first, so I covered many of his expenses. Rent, food, even helping him buy his first car. I saw it as an investment in his future. I wanted him to have the stability to focus on his career instead of worrying about small struggles. And when he finally started climbing the ladder at work, I stood in the background quietly, never asking for credit, never reminding him of the sacrifices I made. All I wanted was respect in return. I believed loyalty was something that naturally grows out of love and effort. I thought that even though we didn't share blood, the bond we built through years of trust and sacrifice would be enough. I thought that one day, when I grew older and weaker, he would look at me with the same gratitude a son shows to his father. That belief gave me comfort in the long hours of work, in the money I gave up, in the time I spent building his future. Looking back now, I realize how naive that belief was. I had confused entitlement for gratitude. I mistook silence for respect. In those early years, when he accepted my help and guidance, I thought we were building something strong. I thought he would look back one day and say, he wasn't my real father, but he was the man who gave me everything I needed. But respect cannot be forced, and loyalty cannot be bought. And what I didn't know then was that my kindness, instead of planting gratitude, was planting arrogance inside him. The boy I raised as my own didn't see me as a father. He saw me as a stepping stone. At the time, though, I didn't see it. At the time, I thought I had built something unbreakable. I thought my efforts would secure his loyalty forever. And that belief was what made the betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. At first, the signs were small, almost too small to notice. A tone in his voice, a quick smirk when I gave advice, a sigh when I asked for help with simple things. I brushed them off, telling myself he was just young, that maybe he didn't know how his words sounded. But little by little, those small signs grew louder. The boy I had raised, the one I supported with everything I had, was no longer looking at me as a father figure. He was looking at me as someone beneath him. It started with the way he spoke about my generation. "You wouldn't understand," he would say with a chuckle when I asked about his work. "Things aren't like they were in your time. The world is faster now." At first I laughed with him, pretending I wasn't hurt. But the more he repeated it, the clearer it became. He wasn't laughing with me. He was laughing at me. In his eyes, I was old-fashioned, outdated, someone clinging to wisdom that no longer mattered. Sometimes, when family friends visited, he would talk over me, correcting me in front of them. If I told a story from my youth, he would roll his eyes or add sarcastic comments, making me look like a fool. I watched as people laughed awkwardly, not knowing how to respond. And I sat there in silence, swallowing the humiliation, telling myself that it was not worth an argument. The arrogance didn't stop there. He began to treat me as if my presence in the house was optional, as if I should be grateful just to exist under the same roof. When I asked him to help me carry groceries, he would sigh dramatically, as though I had asked him to move mountains. When I asked him to fix something small around the house, he would mutter under his breath, "Do it yourself. You need to stop depending on me." Those words cut deep. Depending on him? I thought of the countless times he had depended on me for money, food, advice, connections. Had he forgotten? Or did he simply not care? What stung the most was the way he began mocking me in front of others. Once, during a family gathering, I offered him advice about saving money, something I had learned through years of hardship. He laughed loudly and said, "Don't worry, old man. I make more in a month than you ever did in a year." The room went quiet, and all eyes turned to me. My face burned, but I forced a smile, pretending I wasn't hurt. Inside, though, something cracked. I endured it all in silence. I told myself that arguing would only make things worse, that maybe with time he would see the error in his ways. I reminded myself that he was still young, that arrogance was often a disease of youth. I thought if I stayed patient, he would grow out of it. But patience, I learned, doesn't cure disrespect. Silence doesn't teach gratitude. It only feeds entitlement. Each night, as I sat alone in my room, I replayed his words in my head. "Old man. Do it yourself. You wouldn't understand." They echoed like poison, slowly eating away at the pride I once carried as a father figure. I had sacrificed so much for him, given him a future, built him a career, handed him opportunities on a silver plate. And yet, instead of respect, I was met with mockery. Instead of gratitude, I was met with arrogance. The pain was not just in his words, but in what they revealed. He never saw me as a father. Not truly. Not in his heart. To him, I was useful when I had something to give, laughable when I had nothing left. That realization sat heavy in my chest. Still, I endured. Still, I told myself not to lower myself to anger. Because I believed that one day, the truth of who I had been to him would matter. One day, he would remember the man who fed him, clothed him, guided him. One day, he would look back and see me not as an old man, but as the father he should have respected. But that day never came. Instead, something far worse did. And the arrogance I had endured in silence was nothing compared to the betrayal that shattered me completely. Betrayal is sharpest when it comes from those you trust. I had endured disrespect from him for years, convincing myself it was arrogance born of youth, something he would outgrow. But nothing prepared me for the night I uncovered the truth that cut deeper than all his mockery combined. It was late, and the house was unusually quiet. I had gone out for a short walk, just to clear my head, to escape the walls that seemed to echo with his laughter at my expense. When I returned, the lights were low, but voices floated through the air, hushed, intimate, and unmistakably wrong. At first I thought maybe the television had been left on, but as I drew closer, I heard laughter. Not the innocent kind, not the kind that belongs to family. It was the laugh of two people who shared a secret they shouldn't. My steps slowed as I moved toward the living room. The door wasn't closed, just ajar enough for me to see, and what I saw froze me where I stood. My stepson, the boy I had raised, supported, sacrificed for, sat far too close to my ex-wife, his hand brushing hers, their bodies leaning toward each other in a way no stepson and stepmother ever should. My breath caught in my chest, my heart hammered. I wanted to believe my eyes deceived me, that I was imagining something that wasn't there. But then she touched his face, and he kissed her hand like a lover would. The world spun. My knees nearly buckled under me. Betrayal has a way of breaking your body before it even reaches your mind. I stumbled back into the shadows, unseen, my hands trembling, my stomach turning. I wanted to burst into the room, to shout, to demand answers, but no words came. I was choking on disbelief, drowning in humiliation. I returned to my room quietly, every step heavier than the last. I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of my bed, my body shaking. My mind tried to make sense of it, but sense was nowhere to be found. This wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal doubled. Betrayal as a husband, because the woman I once gave my heart to had chosen to humiliate me with someone who should have been untouchable. Betrayal as a father figure, because the young man I had raised, the one I gave everything to, had spit in my face in the cruelest way possible. I buried my face in my hands, shame burning hotter than any fire. It wasn't just about what they had done. It was about what it meant. It meant that all my sacrifices, all my trust, all my efforts had been mocked behind my back. It meant that the respect I hoped to earn was never there to begin with. It meant that while I believed I had built a family, they were tearing it apart in secret. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I sat in the darkness, replaying every moment of my life with them, wondering how I could have been so blind. I thought of the meals I had provided, the money I had given, the nights I stayed up late planning his career path. And now, while I sat alone in humiliation, they sat together in betrayal. The pain was unbearable, but so was the rage. I clenched my fists until my knuckles went white, my jaw tight as I whispered into the silence. Why? After everything I did, why? But the silence gave no answer. I realized then that humiliation was the one thing they thought I couldn't fight. They thought I would stay quiet, swallow it down, carry their secret like I carried all my sacrifices. But they had forgotten something. Silence may protect for a time, but betrayal plants seeds of vengeance. And though I felt powerless in that moment, a storm was beginning to rise inside me, a storm that would not rest until it destroyed him. The night after I witnessed their betrayal, I sat at the dining table with a plate in front of me, but I couldn't eat. The food tasted like dust, every bite heavy with shame. Across that same table, I had once shared meals with them, believing we were a family. I had laughed, listened to stories, and thought myself blessed, even if life had not been kind to me before. But now, the table felt like an altar of humiliation, a place where I was reminded that while I sacrificed, they betrayed. My appetite was gone, not because of hunger, but because of the weight crushing my chest. I sat in silence, replaying everything in my head. The moments of kindness I had given him, the trust I had placed in her, the sacrifices I had made for both. And all of it was mocked in secret. I thought of the suit I gave him for his first job interview, the contacts I introduced him to, the advice I offered even when he dismissed me. I thought of the nights I worked long hours so he could study, so he could live without worry. And now, he had chosen to spit on all of it by lying with the woman I once called my wife. Each memory hurt more than the last. I remembered walking him through his first mistakes, covering for him so his reputation wouldn't be ruined. I remembered telling him, "One day, you'll thank me," and believing it with all my heart. But sitting there that night, I realized the thank you would never come. Gratitude was foreign to him. Loyalty was foreign. Respect was foreign. He saw me not as a father, but as a fool. A fool too weak to notice, too old to act. The humiliation was worse than betrayal itself. It wasn't just that they had done it. It was that they had done it under my roof, in my world, with full confidence that I would never see, never know, never fight back. That assumption cut the deepest. In their eyes, I wasn't just betrayed, I was powerless. And powerlessness is the cruelest wound of all. I began to eat alone most nights, even when they sat in the same house. I couldn't bear to hear his arrogant voice or see her face without remembering what I had seen. I would take my plate to my room, shutting the door, chewing slowly, as if each bite carried the taste of ashes. I felt mocked not just as a husband, not just as a father figure, but as a man. The people I had built my life around had laughed at me in silence, believing I would never know. And when I did know, they believed I would do nothing. At night, when I lay down, I stared at the ceiling, asking myself how I had come to this. How had years of sacrifice ended with me sitting alone, stripped of dignity, carrying a wound no one else could see? I felt smaller every day, my back bending not from age but from shame. But even in that silence, even in that humiliation, something began to stir inside me. I thought of the boy's arrogance, the way he mocked me in front of others, calling me old, useless, out of touch. I thought of his smirk when I gave him advice, his dismissive tone when I asked for help. He believed I was powerless. He believed I was finished. But he had forgotten one truth. Weakness can be an illusion. He had taken my dignity as a husband, and he had taken my respect as a father figure. But he had left one thing untouched, the influence I still held in the world he cared about most: his career. He had forgotten the hands that fed him, guided him, introduced him. He had forgotten that even in silence, I was still watching, still capable, still dangerous. And as I ate in silence, my humiliation slowly turned to resolve. He thought I would swallow this betrayal and carry it to my grave. But he was wrong. I would not die with shame in my chest. I would make him choke on it instead. When a man believes he has destroyed you, he often forgets what you still carry. My stepson thought he had broken me. He believed the affair with my ex-wife was a secret too humiliating for me to ever confront. He thought I would sit in silence until the end of my days, too weak, too old, too powerless to act. And in one way, he was right. I did not shout. I did not fight. I did not run through the house demanding answers. Instead, I sat quietly, studying him. Because while he thought he was untouchable in my personal life, he had forgotten where his pride truly lived. His career, his job was everything to him. He wore it like armor, bragged about it at every dinner, and used it as proof that he was better than me. He would tell people, "I make more money in a month than the old man ever did in a year," not realizing that his first step into that world came from me. I was the one who paid for his education. I was the one who gave him my suit when he had his first interview. I was the one who picked up the phone and called contacts who trusted me, men who would never have given him the time of day without my word. His arrogance made him forget all of that, but I hadn't forgotten. And I hadn't forgotten something else either: his boss. A man I had known years before, a man whose respect I had earned when we were younger, building our lives through sweat and honesty. His boss was not just a businessman, he was a man who valued loyalty above all. To him, betrayal in the home was a mirror of betrayal in the workplace. And my stepson, so proud of his spotless reputation, so proud of being called a family man, had no idea that one phone call could shatter all of it. That was the weakness he forgot. His reputation was not built by him alone. It was built with my help, with my money, with my connections. And reputations, no matter how carefully polished, are fragile when truth is placed against them. I began to think of all the ways he had boasted about his success. The way he strutted through the house in his expensive suit. The way he left his briefcase on the table as though it were a trophy. The way he laughed when he spoke of climbing higher. He thought his career made him untouchable. He thought his paycheck was a shield. But to me, it was a target. He had stripped me of dignity in my own home. He had mocked me as weak. But he had forgotten the one thing every arrogant man forgets: where he came from and who helped him get there. He thought betrayal in the home would stay hidden in the shadows. He never imagined that betrayal could follow him into the office, into the very heart of the world he cared most about. As I sat in silence those days after the discovery, I no longer felt powerless. I no longer felt like a man without a voice. I realized I still had influence, not in my house, but in his world. And when you know where a man's pride lives, you know exactly where to strike. I whispered to myself, late at night, he betrayed me with my past. I will bury him with his future. And from that moment forward, the shame that had weighed on me began to turn into something sharper. It wasn't just about surviving the humiliation anymore, it was about reclaiming dignity, not with fists or screams, but with precision. He thought he was clever. He thought I would never fight back. But the truth is, revenge doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a phone call, and it destroys a man in places he never thought could break. Revenge is not always about shouting or fists or chaos. Sometimes the sharpest revenge is silence, the kind that waits patiently until the strike cannot be ignored. After days of replaying the betrayal in my mind, after nights of sitting in the dark with my dignity broken, I finally knew what I had to do. My stepson thought I was powerless. He thought age had made me weak, but he forgot that wisdom grows where youth fades, and I still had enough strength to bury him, not with anger, but with precision. The first thing I needed was proof. Betrayal may live in the shadows, but to expose it, you must drag it into the light. I remembered the messages I had glimpsed on his phone, the whispered calls he made late at night when he thought no one was listening, the unexplained trips he excused as business. Every lie left a trail, and I began collecting each piece of it. Quietly, carefully, I started keeping track. Receipts from hotels he never mentioned. Phone records that showed calls at hours no loyal husband should make. Screenshots of messages I caught when he left his laptop open carelessly. I documented it all, every small detail, every scrap of evidence that painted the picture of who he really was. It wasn't easy. There were nights I felt the weight of guilt pressing on me. Guilt for spying, guilt for exposing him, guilt for what it would do to the family once the truth came out. But then I would hear his mocking laughter in my memory, or see the image of him with my ex-wife burned into my mind, and the guilt hardened into resolve. He hadn't hesitated to humiliate me. He hadn't paused before betraying me. Why should I hesitate to end him? Once the evidence was gathered, I thought of how to use it. Screaming at him in the house would accomplish nothing. He would deny it, twist it, throw the blame back on me, and I would be left looking like a bitter old man. Confronting my ex-wife would change nothing. She had already chosen betrayal over respect. No, my strike had to be somewhere he couldn't twist, couldn't escape, couldn't recover. His pride, his reputation, his career. I remembered his boss, a man I had once shared drinks with in my younger days, back when trust and loyalty meant everything. That man valued integrity above skill. To him, a man who couldn't be trusted at home couldn't be trusted in the workplace. My stepson had built his entire image at work around being a responsible, loyal family man. I would tear that mask away in front of the very man who believed it most. So I prepared the evidence carefully. I printed everything, arranged it in order. The receipts, the messages, the proof that he was living a double life. I slipped it into an envelope, the same way I had once slipped my savings into his hand when he needed money. Only this time, the envelope would not build his future. It would destroy it. As I sealed it shut, I whispered to myself, no shouting, no fighting, just one call. One call to the right man. I wasn't just planning revenge, I was planning justice. Because while he had betrayed me in my home, I would betray him in his world, the world he thought I could never touch. For years, I had sat quietly as he mocked me. For years, I had endured his arrogance in silence. But silence, I learned, does not mean weakness. Silence can also be strategy. And now, with the evidence in my hand and the plan in my mind, I felt a strength I hadn't felt in years. He thought I was powerless. But soon, he would learn that the old man he laughed at was the man who held the power to end everything he had built. The morning I decided to make the call, the house was quiet. My stepson had left early, dressed in his expensive suit, carrying his briefcase like a trophy. He thought he was walking into another day of success, another day where his reputation protected him like armor. He didn't know that before the sun set, that armor would be ripped away. I sat at the table with the envelope beside me, staring at the phone. My hands didn't tremble, not anymore. The humiliation I once carried had burned away, leaving behind a steady calm. Revenge, I realized, doesn't always come with rage. Sometimes it comes with patience, with clarity, with the quiet confidence that the truth is finally about to do its work. I picked up the phone and dialed the number I had carried in my memory for years. His boss answered after the second ring, his voice deep, professional, the same as I remembered. "Hello?" "It's been a long time," I said softly, giving my name. There was a pause, then recognition. His tone shifted instantly, warmer, respectful. "Well, I'll be damned. It has been a long time. How are you?" "I'm steady," I replied. "But I need to speak with you. It's important. It concerns one of your men, my stepson." Silence hung on the line. Then, cautious, he said, "Go on." I took a breath and began, my voice calm but firm. "You know him as a hard-working, responsible man. You know him as a loyal employee. You probably see him as a family man, someone who represents your company well. But I need to tell you the truth. That image is a mask." I explained everything, slowly, carefully, each word chosen like a blade. I told him how my stepson had betrayed me, not just with arrogance, not just with disrespect, but with an affair, with my ex-wife, under my own roof. I told him how a man who destroys the foundation of family cannot be trusted in business. That betrayal is betrayal, no matter where it lives. He didn't interrupt me, he listened, and when I finished, I said the line I had prepared for days, the line that carried all my pain, all my humiliation, all my justice. If he betrays his family, he will betray your company. Then, without hesitation, I told him I had proof. The envelope wasn't just paper. It was the end of the mask my stepson had worn for years. I offered to send it, and within minutes, I did. Photos, messages, receipts, everything laid out, undeniable, undeniable, undeniable. On the other end of the line, his boss let out a slow breath. "I see," he said finally. His voice was different now, colder, sharper. "Thank you for telling me. We don't keep men like that here." I hung up the phone with a calmness that surprised me. My hands didn't shake, my heart didn't pound. I felt steady, lighter than I had in years. For so long, I had carried silence like a chain. For so long, I had endured humiliation with no way to fight back. But in that moment, with one call, I had struck where it mattered most, not in his house, not in his bed, but in his future. I sat back in my chair, whispering to myself, "It's done." The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was freedom. The days after the call felt strangely calm. I went about my routines quietly, drinking my tea in the morning, reading the newspaper in silence, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. My stepson strutted through the house as usual, adjusting his tie, smirking when he glanced at me, still carrying himself like the world belonged to him. He didn't know that the ground beneath his feet was already crumbling. He didn't know that every step he took was leading him closer to the fall. It happened sooner than I expected. Only 3 days later, I watched from the window as he came home in the middle of the afternoon. His car pulled into the driveway fast, too fast, the tires screeching slightly as he parked. He slammed the door and stormed inside, his face pale, his jaw clenched, his movements jerky. Gone was the confident man who usually walked with his chin high. He looked smaller, tighter, like a balloon deflated in seconds. I didn't ask him what happened. I didn't have to. I already knew. But I listened from my room as he shouted, throwing his jacket against the wall, slamming his briefcase onto the floor. His wife asked timidly what was wrong, and he barked at her. They fired me. Fired me on the spot, after everything I've done for that company. Gone. His voice cracked with panic. I could hear him pacing, muttering to himself. They showed me the papers, the photos. How the hell did they get those? He cursed, louder this time, his words spilling out in rage and confusion. He didn't know yet that the man sitting quietly just a few feet away was the one who had placed that envelope in his boss's hands. The arrogance that once filled the house was gone. No more smug jokes, no more superiority, no more laughter at my expense. All that remained was desperate silence, punctuated by angry outbursts that grew weaker each hour. The mask he had worn for years, the image of the loyal family man, the trustworthy employee, the rising star, had been ripped off, and underneath was the truth: a liar, a cheater, a fraud. I imagined the scene in his office, his boss holding the evidence, laying it out on the desk. My stepson scrambling for excuses, his words stumbling as his world collapsed. Colleagues watching, whispering as he was escorted out. The man who once boasted about his spotless reputation now walking through the halls with shame burning on his face. The higher a man builds his pride, the harder the fall when truth finally knocks him down. And fall he did. Calls stopped coming. Friends stopped visiting. Even his wife's eyes looked different when she gazed at him now. Not with respect, but with disappointment. His phone rang once that evening, but instead of answering, he hurled it across the room, smashing it against the wall. He knew what the calls were. Whispers, questions, people wanting to know if the rumors were true. And rumors, once born, never die. I sat alone in my room, listening, feeling the calm wash over me. For years, I had been the one humiliated. For years, I had carried the weight of betrayal, sitting in silence while he mocked me. Now, the silence was his. Now, the humiliation was his. My revenge had not come through shouting or fists, but through precision. And it worked. The house felt different that night. He didn't eat. He didn't laugh. He didn't strut. He sat in the dark with his head in his hands, a man undone by the truth. And as I watched him through the crack of my door, I thought to myself, this is what justice looks like. It was only a matter of time before his rage turned toward me. For days, he sulked around the house like a man with no skin, raw and exposed, snapping at anyone who spoke to him, slamming doors when no one did. The weight of losing his career was too heavy for him to carry, and when men like him can't lift their own burdens, they look for someone else to blame. And in his eyes, there was only one man left in the house he could unload his fury on. Me. I heard his footsteps long before the door burst open, heavy, uneven, stomping down the hallway like an approaching storm. He didn't knock. He didn't pause. He shoved the door wide, and it slammed against the wall with a crack. His face was red, his eyes wide, his chest rising and falling like he had sprinted. He pointed at me with a shaking hand, his finger trembling not just with anger but with desperation. "You!" he shouted, his voice raw. "You did this!" "Don't deny it." I didn't move from my chair. I sat still, hands folded, my back straight, despite the ache in my bones. I had waited for this moment. I had rehearsed it in my mind over and over, not because I needed words, but because I needed control. He wanted me rattled. He wanted me afraid. But fear had left me the night I picked up the phone. He stepped further into the room, his voice cracking. I had everything. A career, respect, a future. And now it's gone. All of it. Do you realize what you've done? You've ruined me. You've destroyed everything I worked for. Spit flew from his mouth as he raged, his fists clenched, his whole body trembling like a man about to collapse under his own fury. I let his words wash over me like rain on stone. I didn't interrupt, didn't argue, didn't even flinch. I wanted him to hear the echo of his own desperation filling the room. He paced, shouted, cursed, his voice bouncing off the walls like a cornered animal. And then finally, when his rage slowed enough for silence to creep in, I lifted my eyes to his and spoke. My voice was calm, cold, clear. You ruined yourself when you betrayed me. I only showed the truth. He froze. His mouth opened, but no words came. His fists loosened, his shoulders stiffened. In that single moment, all his shouting, all his blame, all his fury collapsed into silence. Because deep down, he knew it was true. He had betrayed me. He had betrayed his family. He had betrayed himself. And all I had done was let the truth out of the cage he thought would hold it forever. I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locked on his. My words cut slower this time, each one landing like a hammer. You ruined me as a husband when you chose her. You ruined me as a father when you mocked me. And now, I ruined you as a man. That is balance. He staggered back a step, his face pale. His lips quivered, but still, no words came. For the first time since I had known him, he wasn't arrogant. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't superior. He was small. Just a boy pretending to be a man, stripped bare by truth. We stood in silence, the weight of it pressing down until he couldn't bear it anymore. With a furious growl, he turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. But the sound didn't rattle me. It calmed me. Because for once, he wasn't the one leaving me humiliated. He was the one walking away in shame. I leaned back in my chair, breathing slowly, my heart steady. The confrontation had come, and it had ended not with his victory, but with mine. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't lifted a hand. I had only spoken the truth, and it had silenced him in a way no shouting ever could. For years, he had mocked me, disrespected me, betrayed me. But in that moment, with his pride shattered and his career gone, he finally saw who I really was. Not a weak old man, not a powerless stepfather, but the one who held the power to end him when the time came. After the confrontation, the house was quieter than it had ever been. Not the heavy, suffocating silence that once made me feel small, but a different kind of silence. The silence of a man defeated, stripped of the lies he once wore as armor. My stepson no longer strutted through the halls with arrogance. He no longer smirked when he looked at me, no longer spoke with the tone of superiority he had carried for so long. He moved like a shadow now, a man reduced to whispers of what he once believed himself to be. And as I watched him crumble day by day, I felt something return to me. Something I thought I had lost forever. My dignity. He avoided me after that night. When our eyes did meet, he looked away first. That was new. For years, I had been the one lowering my head, pretending not to hear his mockery, shrinking under his arrogance. But now, it was him who couldn't hold my gaze. It was him who walked away, shoulders hunched, carrying the shame that no words could erase. That was justice to me. Not in the form of loud revenge, but in the quiet restoration of balance. He had taken so much from me, respect, pride, peace of mind, but I had taken back something more powerful: control. News spread quickly beyond the house. His colleagues whispered, his friends stopped calling. His boss, the man who once praised his work, now spoke his name with disdain. In the business world, reputation is currency, and he was bankrupt. Every door that had opened for him through my effort was now closed, not because I slammed it, but because he had chosen betrayal over loyalty. I had simply handed the truth to the right man, and the truth did the rest. My ex-wife's name was dragged into it too. People began to see the affair for what it was, not passion, not love, but betrayal layered on betrayal. She avoided me, avoided everyone, ashamed of the scandal she had chosen. And while her shame was hers to carry, I did not chase her with anger. She had already taken enough from me. My revenge was never about her. It was about him, the boy I raised as my own who thought he could humiliate me without consequence. And so I lived quietly after. I did not boast about what I had done. I did not parade my victory in front of others. True justice does not need an audience. It lives in the heart of the man who suffered, and it breathes peace back into him. I spent my mornings once again with my tea, my evenings with my thoughts, and for the first time in many years, I felt steady. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if perhaps I went too far, if destroying his career was too ruthless, too heavy a punishment for betrayal in the home? My answer is always the same. Betrayal has no borders. A man who betrays his family will betray his work, his friends, his world. The sooner he is exposed, the better for everyone. I did not destroy him. I revealed him. And in revealing him, I freed myself. He betrayed me with my past, with the woman who once wore my ring in the shadows of the home I had built. But I buried him with his future, with the career he worshipped, with the pride he thought untouchable. That is justice. That is balance. Now when I walk through the house, I do not walk with shame. I walk with my head high, my steps steady. He does not laugh anymore when I pass. He does not mock me, does not roll his eyes, does not speak down to me. He is silent. And in that silence, I hear victory. Because in the end, this story is not about an affair. It is not even about betrayal. It is about dignity. A man can lose money, lose family, lose years of his life. But if he loses his dignity, he has lost everything. And when someone tries to take that from you, you must take back what matters most to them. That is what I did. Final thought. He betrayed me with my past. I buried him with his future.